Hey everybody, Weston here with the Hidden Gibbon, and before we get into today's video, I just want to give a quick heads up. I am not a native speaker of the languages you will hear for these folks from history, but they are important figures and they do matter, so I want to do my best to pronounce their names correctly and present them respectfully to you. Each of these people matter. They're from wonderful cultures from across the world, and I want to combine my love of magic with my love of history and want to do it respectfully. Thank you. Hey everybody, Weston here with the Hidden Gibbon, back with another video, and this is a follow-up to my original video I did. I love history. I love it a lot, and I love magic. And I wanted to take the time to combine two of my favorite things from, or in my life. I wanted to combine history with Magic the Gathering. And a lot of the figures that you will see today, some of them you may have heard of, some of them are less common, known to history, but equally as important as anyone else. I will have native pronunciations and native script when available on the left-hand side of the screen, so that way you are able to pronounce along with me. But without further ado, we have 11 historical figures as magic cards. Let's get straight into it. So first, we have, in the English pronunciation, Harald Hardrada. And in his original pronunciation, it would be Haraldur Hardrathi. And he was the king of Norway from 1046 to 1066. He served with the Byzantine Empire as a Varangian guard. For those who don't know, the Byzantines made a habit of hiring Norse and sometimes Kievan Rus into the Varangian Guard, which was like, think of like the elite palace guard for the empire. He fought across Eastern Europe, across the Mediterranean, and then he invaded England in 1066. And that is actually where he met his demise. When he invaded England, this was a period in history for England where there was a lot of chaos. You had Harold Godwinson, the King of England, having to defend both against Harald Hardrathi and also William the Conqueror. And at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, Harald Hardrathi was fighting with his men. There was a famous tale of one of his warriors holding the bridge for a long time, but he was actually struck down by an arrow in that battle. And so for his magic card, I wanted to do a theme on the raids, because he, as a Varangian, did raid a lot, did a lot of fighting, and so we have him as a 3/3 for 3 generic, 1 red, 1 white, Viking raids. Whenever Harald Hardrathi deals combat damage to an opponent, destroy up to 1 target artifact that opponent controls, then create a tapped treasure token. And then you can sacrifice 2 artifacts and have Harald Hardrathi deal 1 damage to each opponent, and he gets a 1/1 counter. Again, I tried really hard to go into this sort of raid and conquest for riches. He was well known for his conquests and his exploits. So that is Harald Hardrathi. Next, we have ourselves, in English pronunciation, Queen Nzinga, but in her native language, it would be Njinga Mbande. She was a queen, and she fought very, very hard against colonialism by the Portuguese. She was well known for both using combat and diplomacy to keep her people safe and keep her realms of Ndango and Matamba, which is in modern Angola, safe from those things. She was a master diplomat. She negotiated with the Portuguese. She converted to Christianity strategically rather than, actually believing in it. And she led a long resistance against colonial expansion in her territories. And she is remembered as a symbol of Angolan sovereignty. The statue is actually in Angola. And so for her card, I made her a 2/2 for 2 generic, a white, a black, and a green, with whenever an opponent attacks you, you may choose another opponent. If you do, The attacking opponent must choose one. Attack that opponent instead, or that opponent creates 2 treasure tokens. So, it's a diplomacy card through and through. She was a master of diplomacy. And so what this does is make it so when an opponent attacks you, they have to attack someone else or give that person extra treasures and resources, kind of like a tax. This is a really unique mechanic. I don't know how well balanced it would be for Magic, but I wanted to do something really unique and really interesting that really plays into Njinga's abilities to use diplomacy to protect her people and send them elsewhere. And the quote for her is, "Go ahead, send your soldiers. We will melt into the trees and strike at you from the stones." She was a very powerful and amazing woman in history. A lot of Western histories don't really teach about her. But that is Queen Njinga. Next, we have in English King Sejong. In Korean, he is Sejong Daehwang. He was known, or is known as Sejong the Great. There's a large statue of him in Seoul that I have seen when I go there with my wife to Korea. And he is very famous for being a sage king, a scholar king. He expanded education. He is most greatly noted for instituting the creation of Hangul, which is the modern Korean text and language. Prior to that, Chinese was being used as the written language. But with the institution of Hangul, which is a phonetic language for the record, so that way each sound makes a thing. But to represent King Sejong in the fact that he was a scholar king, promoted learning, promoted just like overall well-being in the realm, I made him a 1/2, but he is for 1 generic and then green, white, and blue, so a Bant commander. He has the ability Scholar King. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a scholarship counter on Sejong. And then you can remove 3 scholarship counters from Sejong to either create a 2/2 scholar creature token. I forgot to put creature in there. Or you can copy target instant or sorcery. Or you can prevent all combat damage this turn. This is supposed to represent the expansion of learning, the prosperity of the realm, and then the stability of the realm under King Sejong. Next, we have Shakushain. Shakushain, that is how you pronounce it in English, or Shakushan. And then in native pronunciation, it would be Shakushan. He was an Ainu warrior from modern day Hokkaido, or as the Ainu would call it, Ainu Mosir. He was a warrior who rose up on Hokkaido against the local Japanese lord. And this was in the 17th century. He led a rebellion. He united many Ainu tribes and communities, and he represented the defense of Ainu lands and their traditions and their trade rights. And he remains a symbol of the Ainu culture to this day. And I wanted to represent his defiance and leadership and unification and defense of his people and his culture. He is a 4/4 for 1 generic, 1 black, 1 green. And whenever a land you control is destroyed, sacrificed, or becomes the target of a spell, you create a 2/2 warrior token. And then you can sacrifice a land, and creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. I think I might have overtuned his power for his mana cost. I think I probably should have made him 2 generic. There is no direct quotes from Shakushain, but a quote that represents him and often referred to him as he rose in defense of his land and his people. And so his ability really accentuates that he united a lot of the Ainu peoples and communities together to protect their land and their people. And so that's part of the whenever the land is destroyed, sacrificed, or becomes the target of a spell, you make a warrior kind of uprising. All right. Next, in English, it's Pamulwi. and also in the native indigenous Australian language is also Pemulwuy. He was an indigenous Australian resistance leader in the late 1700s. He fought against the British settlement in the Sydney region. He organized guerrilla-style resistance against the occupation and colonialization. He was famous for having survived many wounds incurred by the British, and he is to this day still a very powerful symbol of Indigenous Australian resistance and rights and sovereignty. And I wanted to represent his mythos almost of being this unstoppable, like, guerrilla warfare resistance leader, in that he is also a 3-drop for a 4/3. He has trample, he has haste, and he is unyielding. Whenever Pemulwuy dies, return him to the battlefield under his owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, unless an opponent sacrifices a land. So, kind of like a Pyrrhic victory for the British. Like, they might be able to beat him, but it will cost them. And then you can sacrifice a land. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So kind of that same ability as Shakushain. Kind of defense of land, resistance against colonialism. And again, this is another one of those characters that, at least in the United States, you will never learn about in your regular history classes. You'll learn about the colonization of Australia, but you will never learn a whole lot about its indigenous peoples and their leaders throughout. Next, we have, in English, Tokugawa Ieyasu, and that is how it is pronounced also in Japanese, is Tokugawa Ieyasu. And he was the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate, kind of the end point of the Sengoku Jidai period, which was a period of massive upheaval in Japan, where we saw figures like Oda Nobunaga and Hideyoshi Toyotomi all fighting for dominance. He is famous for, he won the Battle of Sekigahara, which is like a final alliance against his rise to prominence and power. And then once he won that battle, Japan experienced a period of 250 years of peace. And this is known as the Edo period. He centralized feudal governance behind the shogun, made it a very powerful central government. And he is known for patience and long-term strategy and the stability that he brought to Japan. And how I wanted to represent this in card form is he is a 3/3 for 2 generic, 1 blue, 1 white, and he has hexproof. And his ability is stability. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose either peace, which is until your next turn, creatures cannot attack unless their controller pays 2, or order. Until your next turn, players can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. Yes, he is kind of a stacks and tax commander, but that is really what the best way to represent the stability of the realm he brought. Nobody was going to cause issues under Tokugawa Ieyasu after he took power without incurring a great amount of problems for themselves. He was very, very strong-willed and very, very good at how he led his statesmanship. And that is represented in his flavor text, too, of after victory, tighten the cords of your helmet. Next, from Central America, we have Netzahualcoyotl, which in his classical Nahuatl language is Netzahualcoyotl. He was a 15th century Texcoco alliance leader. He was most famous, actually, not for his wars or anything like that. He was most famous for being a poet and a philosopher king. He was known to be a lover of the arts, philosophy, and he has a lot of poetry that he constructed. And he built lots of aqueducts and public works. He reformed the legal codes under his rule, and he is to this day still celebrated as a patron of the arts and wisdom. And so he is represented as this poet king as a 3/5 for 1 generic and then Bant. And Vigilance and Poet King. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, choose one. You can create a 1/1 white citizen creature token. You can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, kind of like, Prosperity Under the Realm, or gain 4 life and draw a card. And at the beginning of your end step, if you created 3 or more tokens this turn, draw a card. So he is a tokens commander. The last ability, you can't really hit that by just using Poet King. You have to have other ways of creating tokens. But I kind of designed him as a token commander because I wanted it to represent how he helped his realm burgeon and blossom. And he has a poem that I used for his flavor text, which is: "Truly do we live on earth, not forever on earth, only a little while here. Although it be jade, it will be broken. Although it be gold, it will be crushed." Pretty awesome. And then next, we have Sitting Bull. In his native Lakotan language, it is Tatanka Iyotaka. Again, I am not a native speaker, so I am trying to do the best I can. Tatanka Iyotaka. And so Tatanka was a spiritual leader and advisor in the Hunkpapa Lakota. He is famous for uniting a great many of the different tribes of indigenous peoples at this time. It was a time of great strife for indigenous Americans as they were being pushed west, land being taken by the United States. He is also famous for being one of the leaders of the Confederation that defeated the U.S. Army at the Little Bighorn, and he was a visionary and political leader. He advocated for Lakota sovereignty throughout his entire life, and he remains a very powerful symbol of indigenous resilience. And on his card, I wanted to represent this. He is a 4/4 for 2 generic, a green and a white. He has Vigilance and Ward 2. And his ability is Circle of Nations, bringing together all of those different nations of people. And whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack or block together, so like a confederation, put a 1/1 counter on each of them. And then creatures you control have indestructible during your opponent's turns as long as you control 4 or more creatures. Again, that strength through bringing people together. And whenever a creature you control dies, if it was blocking or blocked, draw a card. And then his quote, I really like his quote. It is, "Let us put our minds together and see what life we can make for our children." He was a very great leader. We do learn about him in history here in the United States, but always from a position from the United States versus the indigenous peoples. Next, we have Wu Zetian, or in her native language, Wu Zhuqian. Again, not a native speaker, but trying my best. And she was the only woman to ever rule China as emperor. She founded the Zhao dynasty, which is from 690 to 700. And then she expanded civil service examinations. She strengthened central bureaucracy and was one of China's most controversial leaders. She was well known for consolidating power and court intrigue. And so I wanted to represent her, Wu Jian, with a 1/1 for Demir. She has Death Touch, and her ability is Court Intrigue. It is whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, put an influence counter on Wu Ziqian, and remove 3 influence counters from her to gain control of target creature. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's what she does. And then, it really gets that heart of controlling her court, consolidating power. In at number 10, we have Suleiman the Magnificent. Suleiman, or Suleiman in Turkic, is a sultan of the Ottoman Empire, one of the greatest sultans of the Ottoman Empire. He expanded the empire to its greatest realms. He was known for being an excellent administrator and lawgiver, reformed legal systems, and he really was a patron of architecture and culture. So I have him represented as a 2/3 for Mardu, and he has vigilance, and he has the ability to decree. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one. War, soldiers get +1/+0 until end of turn to represent the expansion of the Empire. Law, opponents can't cast spells during combat this turn. Or tribute, each opponent loses 2 life unless they sacrifice a permanent. That last one's probably pretty strong, but these commanders, in the way that I designed them, I want to do them justice for just how vital and important they were to their cultures and various points in history. And Suleiman here, I think that these abilities very much truly represent him in a very good way, in how he did and what he did for his empire. And then last but certainly not least, we have Sun Tzu in English, but Sun Tzu in his original language. He was an advisor. He's most famous for his writings for The Art of War. And I represented him as a 1/2 for 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, so Grixis. And his ability is, of course, The Art of War. When Sun Tzu enters, place the top 3 cards of your library face down on the battlefield. Treat these as 2/2 colorless creatures. This is different than Manifest, and this is different than Morph. And then whenever a face down creature card you control blocks or becomes blocked, turn it face up. If it is a permanent, it remains in play. So if you turn it face up and it's land, it goes into your land area, artifact, etc. Creature will still do damage, based on the fact that it's a creature. If it is a permanent, it remains in play. If it is an instant or sorcery, you may cast that spell without paying its mana cost. He's really strong, so I made him a 4-drop and a very low power and toughness, but I really think this gets at the heart of the most famous line from The Art of War. All warfare is based on deception. And so I could see him as a blink commander, where you blink him in and out, putting down a whole bunch of your deck face down, and then, but still having to rely on combat to get the busted things off of him. But yeah, that is Sun Tzu. Let me know what you think of these commanders in the comments down below. Which ones would you play with? Which ones are way too overtuned? Which ones do you think are weak? Were any of these figures from history people that you had not heard of before? I would encourage all of you to look some of these folks up and look at more of their achievements more than the small amount of cliff notes that I could give them. They truly deserve their moment in history and to shine, especially those who aren't as famous as, say, Sun Tzu here. But let me know in the comments down below. I love history. Let me know if you want to see another one like these. This really does combine my 2 favorite things in life, which is Magic the Gathering and history. And like I said, let me know if I did this in a respectful enough way. I want my goal with this is to educate folks, provide ideas for historical themed maybe sets in the future, and then give folks a way to both be educated about history and, for those folks who see some of these figures represented who wouldn't normally see those figures represented in history, give them a little bit of that. But as always, I am Weston with the Hidden Gibbon, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.